Are you a man who's maybe challenged mentally with a lot of things that have come your way? Or maybe your growth has been halted? Well, welcome to my brand new podcast and very first episode. And today, what I'm going to share with you is my top 5 lessons I've learned on my men's mental health journey and growth journey with you, and what I found really useful moving forward. And if you stay until the end, I have an extra point that you'll want to stick around for then as well. So yeah, like I say, welcome to my very first podcast episode of Men's Mental Health. I'm going to give you a little bit of my story first of all, and some of the things I've gone through in terms of my own mental health, and also things that have really halted my growth. Now, you may or may not know that I also run a podcast called the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset. When I say run, of course, I'm the host, and that's done very well. That's come up to almost 3 million downloads as I record this, and it's a top 1% in the world. Now, there's a very clear message I want to give today about someone's successes in the external world does not mean that necessarily everything's okay internally. And I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to be very vulnerable and share my stories on this podcast because I think it's really important. And why I specifically decided to make this podcast is because I believe that mental health is really important to talk about. And it's really good that over time it's got more attention. I also feel like there's things I want to contribute to the area of men's mental health. And this, I want to be very clear on a couple of things. This is not to say that like all genders need support with I believe all genders need support with their mental health, right? Absolutely. I am just sharing my experience as a man, right? It does not mean that I don't think it's equally as important for everyone to really work on their mental health and look after it. And obviously I want as many people as possible to benefit from my messages across both my podcasts. Yet I feel like there wasn't anything consistently in terms of content out there that I could see on men's mental health in terms of a podcast, certainly. And I really want to talk about this because there's a lot of bad things happening. Well, I know there's beauty in the world, but there's also quite a lot of bad things happening in terms of what men are doing, either to themselves and others, because of the internal challenges that we sometimes face. And this is what I really wanted to make this podcast about, and really, really just be open, because that's the only way we can really, truly relate to each other and go deeper than just perhaps a surface level, right? And I also want to point out that I'm not a mental health professional, be very clear on that. And one thing that really bugs me is, 100%, there's certain things in life where you need to be qualified, you need to have the certifications and all these kind of things. Like if I got on an airplane and the pilot wasn't qualified to fly, and I knew that, I'd get off the plane, right? There's certain like therapy and all sorts of things like that, or physical workouts that you want someone to be qualified, right, to talk through, have certifications, gone through programs. Where I get really bugged, or what really bugs me in today's world, is like everyone trying to do certifications in some areas where we really don't need to, just so we feel like we're enough, right? And I am just going to be very open and share my experience in terms of my own mental health journey, because it's been tough at times. And again, like if you've got real challenges with your mental health and things are really severe, do of course contact a professional for help. Yeah, I just want to give a little bit of guidance what's worked for me. Okay, so I want to dive into my story a little bit, and this will probably be a little bit of a longer episode because it's the very first one. And what I want to do is make consistent episodes, and I'll be making 5 this week, because I don't feel like one a week is enough for what needs to be said and what I want to share. And I'm a bit of an overachiever, which you'll soon hear in my story. And I want to make as many as possible. So here's my story, and then I'm going to give you some top 5 lessons and some practical tips that might benefit you. I had a reasonably good childhood, right? I'm not gonna sit here and say like I went through like physical, mental, sexual, or spiritual abuse or anything like that. I did not. I had two loving parents. I've got a very loving sister. I had some great grandparents. I'm still blessed to have an amazing family, right? I know people go through different circumstances, right? Yeah, I kind of had now and then these kind of like empty feelings inside of myself. And of course, that's, some abuse people go through. Obviously, my heart goes out to anyone who's gone through anything like that. Yeah, I've also learned that we shouldn't be guilty because we're like, wow, my issue's nothing compared to someone else. No, that causes, for me, a lot of mental health challenges when you're dismissing your emotions and saying it's nothing. That's one of the worst things I've done for myself. I now allow myself to process and feel what I need to. However insignificant I think it is not. It is important because I need to feel it rather than coming out in unhealthy ways. So I had a good childhood. Through my teenage years, again, wasn't too bad. But I would mention this in my childhood. I did I did lose a brother at 2.5. I lost my grandma when I was 7. I lost my granddad when I was about 2. So there was a bit of loss, and I think that kind of went into my system and impacted me down the line. Not really able to process it at those ages. But yeah, generally beautiful, amazing parents that I've still got to this day. I'm very blessed. I know not everyone is, but yeah, I love my mum and dad with all my heart. I love my sister, amazing. Obviously, love my brother in heaven as well. As a teenager, again, nothing like no severe bullying. Yet now and then did I get in a little bit of debate with someone or slightly get picked on, but no, there wasn't any severe bullying or anything like that. I was kind of a little bit chubby, a little bit spotty, now and then called something like every kid is. Wasn't necessarily the most popular of the ladies. But I did, had the odd girlfriend for a very short period of time as I went through sort of school as a teenager and stuff like that. I also I went through a car crash, which I didn't really process, which was difficult. And then I struggled when I was sort of like 13, 14 with a form. I was never diagnosed with it, so I can't say that I was diagnosed with it, but I had a friend who was diagnosed with derealization. And this is when you don't feel like you're in the world that you're in. You feel like everything's fake, and you feel like you're in a dream even though you're awake. Right. And we won't go into the whole spiritual thing or anything like that, but it can be a very scary place. 13. I was going through the exact same things he said. And when I was upset, I was scared, I was having panic attacks in class. The school nurse was upset because I kept going there, which it makes me a little bit upset now that people going through those challenges weren't given the right attention. And then even people close to me were just like, what are you doing? You're just overtired, right? And it was really upsetting. But generally through my teenage years, like, again, I really feel into those things now because I need to process them and I dismiss them a lot. But generally through other things in my teenage years, nothing severely challenging. Now we're sort of talking like teenage years to 20s and sort of onwards. And then I'll get into my 30s. I'm 33 now. So I went to university and I got to sort of the age of 18, and then I started going out with my mates drinking. I was really good. I only drank like once or twice underage, right? Not overage, underage. So I know it's quite a common thing. We hear about underage drinking, and we're not going to go any views on that or anything like that. I don't have any particular ones. But yeah, like that I want to talk about. But like I didn't really drink underage or anything like that. Once or twice went to a couple of parties, but nothing major, right? I used to just go watch football with my dad a lot. Didn't have, and sort of had a few friends now and then do something. Anyway, like then when I did start drinking when I was 18, I used to go out most weekends. And at first it wasn't really bad. It was, I had a few pints, get picked up, go home because I still lived with my parents at that young age. Then went to university. And what I noticed at university, I started getting I had a lack of, in some cases, social confidence, mainly, if I'm honest, talking to girls, right? I was very innocent when I was sort of at the age of 18. I wasn't as confident as some of the other guys. I was less innocent through university, but anyway, I lacked that kind of confidence, and I started drinking more. And not every day, but there were times I'd go out and overdrink. And then I went through my 20s, and it was kind of a cycle of developing my career. I was doing well, I had friends. And then and then there were sometimes I drink more than others. And it's kind of like a cycle, nothing, particularly stuck out. But I'd be like short term sometimes dating a girl, and we wouldn't I was never really together with someone more than 6 months, or anything like that, and never fell in love or anything like that. Which I know some people did have their serious relationships, but I didn't. But I had a really good social life, and I guess deep down I wanted it. But yeah, I had a pretty good career, I had a good social life. I was playing football, or soccer if in the US, and I still do. And yeah, it was okay. But then I hit my late 20s, and I got a really good job. I moved to a city, had a beautiful place. And that's when my challenges really started coming to the surface. Even though I was in the best, as I've got to the best circumstances of my life, this I realized is when quite a lot of my mental health challenges started coming to the surface. And what I've realized is a lot of them were buried deep underneath, and certain events sort of triggered them out of me. And maybe I can't explain it in a complex way in this episode, but I'm doing my best. Now, what really brought out some of these insecurities or challenges was when I got into my late 20s. It was the first time I met a girl that I really, really liked. Other times it's sometimes meh, didn't work out, not that bothered, that kind of thing. I'd be a bit upset now and then, but not massively, right? And I met someone, really got on. We were really got on really passionately. It went really well. And then unfortunately, it was a really bad time that she was sort of moving away. And that sort of really brought out a lot of upset and sadness, and sort of all these abandonment and issues that are going on in my mind. And I reacted by going out and then drinking quite heavily, not every night, but quite regularly. So this was a fair few years ago. And then I met someone else, and she was great as well. We had a laugh, and I kind of jumped into that very quickly, and that didn't go to plan. And I may go a lot deeper vulnerably what happened there as well another time, but let's say it just didn't work out, and I got into a very dark place, and all these kind of things when I was in childhood, losing people, that kind of started really coming to the surface. And then actually lockdown started to come about, and actually, even though I know it was a really bad time for a lot of people, it was a time where I still had a job. I was quite fortunate in my circumstance. I could work from it, and I started doing all this personal growth stuff more and more that I'd sort of got into in the last year before that, even though I was going through these challenges. And yeah, I obviously wasn't dating anyone or anything like that, and I was really focusing on me doing my growth, started a coaching business and made a bit from that, right? So this was 2020 and 2021, and things were okay, right? I started feeling good, excited again. And then in recent last couple of years, life is my personal trainer. It pushed me to really grow, let's say, when you can look at it like that. We go to the gym, our personal trainer grows us physically by pushing us past our comfort zone. Life started to do that with me in a mental way, an emotional way, when I look at it now. But it brought me into the things like a financial challenge, a job loss, and a really bad dating and relationship scenario that brought out some of my toughest wounds, deepest wounds that I'd never looked at before. And all these things that I'd repressed. Repressed is when you unconsciously push emotions away, and suppress is when you sort of choose optionally to do it. All these repressed and suppressed things really started coming up, and I got into some very dark thoughts, very sort of fight or flight response, like panic in the body. And on the outside, I'd done all these amazing things, like grown and started this podcast that started in end of 2019 after my challenges, and was really growing in 2020 and 2021. I had got a sales job, and like now I'm sort of like a sales manager, and I was doing really well in my sport and all these things. And, you know, I get on with most people wherever I go. I was pretty well known in the personal growth field. Yet, like some of these, I was probably in the darkest period of my life, and my thoughts were getting, I wasn't at a point, if I'm being very open and honest straight away, just so you can really feel into this, because I don't want to hide things. It wasn't a point where I would have taken my own life, but at the same time, I didn't like waking up at times because I'd really struggled to see a bright future. And now and then, even now, there are days where I really have to sit with myself. And again, I'm not blaming external events, because I always believe life is testing us, whatever it's a person, a situation, yet they can get into our deepest wounds, our deepest fears and insecurities. And I'm this perceived very confident guy. I'd really push myself out of my comfort zone. That's why I started my previous podcast, because it was all about me being, how I got courageous, how I overcame my fear of public speaking and all these kind of things. Yet these internal challenges, I realized the self-love, even though I thought it was good, was not good. And I've had to really deepen my relationship with myself in the last 2 years. So what I really wanted to do on this podcast is really be real with you and tell you, I'm not saying that I'm going to be happy and like it's suddenly I'm amazing, I'm feeling amazing and I used to be really sad. There are going to be times where I'm going to be struggling a little bit, and now and then, but I can come back a lot quicker than I used to. I've dived into things like somatic breath work, into brain health, into neuro encoding, which is from one of my mentors who I work for as well. And this is all about NLP, hypnotherapy, psychology. So I've done all these things, and breath work is probably one of my favorite. I have the tools to help me get back a lot quicker, but there are going to be times where life is hard. Some people put their social media up like they're always happy. I just want to be real and say that it can be okay sometimes if you just need to sit with yourself as a man and really hug yourself. I felt sad earlier, and I wasn't 100% sure where it was coming from. I went to the pub and I wasn't drinking. I'm on a period of not drinking alcohol, and if I'm honest, in 2022 there are periods where, like, I rather than just drinking once a week, that I might drink 2 to 3 times a week, a bit more, just because I wanted to get out the pain I was in. But yeah, like I felt sad earlier. I just sat on myself, and it felt so much better. So I really want to share with you a little bit about my story and who I am, and give you some guidance as well. It doesn't matter what your circumstances. We can all get into struggling places, whether it's stress, whether it's anxiety, whether it's just feeling really sad. The important thing is to really be with it, not to push it away. And I've learned a lot of tools, and I'm going to share them with you on this podcast as well. I'm currently not doing any like coaching or mentoring in that capacity. I'm going to expand and share my message and get on more stages, yes, and write blogs. But I just hope I can give you some value in this sense. Okay, so my top 5 lessons I've learned. And like I said, this is probably going to be a longer podcast episode. Number 1, speak to the right person. This is critical. Like they say, it's important to talk 100%. It's so important to talk and not keep things bottled to yourself. Yeah, I think this is often looked over. Speaking to the wrong person can be actually more damaging than not sharing. Like, for example, if you're feeling horrendous and then you share it with like someone who then shares your secrets with other people, that's going to make you feel worse. So it's all about listening to your body and your senses and feeling if someone's safe to trust, right? Can you guarantee everyone's going to hear you and listen to you? No, you can't, right? So for me, that's the key one I've learned, is about really knowing who to talk to. And if you're honest with yourself, you know who the right people are. There are people who are very close in my life and they're beautiful, amazing human beings, right? But I don't go to them to share some of my vulnerable stuff. Not because they're going to blurt it out to other people. I know they won't. But well, one or two might accidentally, but they kind of do it from a place they think is caring, but it's really not. But some people just won't hear you, and that can be really upsetting. So really speak to the right person. Get yourself a coach if you need to, or someone who's an expert, right? Or just know the people you can talk to. Right. Your second one, your way to distress and relax yourself is your way. You hear things out there like you got to do meditation, you got to do journaling, all these kind of things, right? And those things are great. And it's really important to know what works for you and what doesn't. So really listen to what's going to be good for you. The third thing, breath work is absolutely gold. I would, again, this is one of the tools relating to two, but this is something I want to recommend from myself. I'm studying to be a somatic breathwork practitioner. This is where you go really deep into the body, release emotions, but also calm yourself down through your breath. So breathwork is gold. So I'd highly recommend looking into this. The fourth one, nutrition and exercise is vital. I know when I can feel it in my body and my emotions. When I eat certain foods, I will feel a certain way. So pay attention to what you're eating and how you're feeling afterwards, and also the impact of different exercise on your mental health. The fifth one and final one, go out, set the bonus one I want to share, is your mental diet is equally as important, if not more important, than your physical diet. So what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're consuming is going to play an impact on you. So if you're constantly listening to things that make you feel bad or make you anxious, that's just going to build up over time. It's like if you're eating like a pizza every single day, that's going to put on weight if you keep doing that every single day. If you keep listening to bad things, like the news, for example, then that's just going to impact your mental health. So pay very clear attention to what your mental diet is as well. Okay, my bonus one is what I would really say, that I want to leave till the end, is find a community. Find a community where you got uplifting people, because you will adapt to your environment. You adapt to what you're surrounded by. If you go to the gym and you keep putting yourself in there, you're going to adapt to that and get fit and healthy. If you keep going to McDonald's, you're going to get overweight and probably unhealthy, right? You are going to adapt. If you're hanging out with negative people, you're going to adapt to that. You're going to feel awful. If you're hanging out with people who are high on life and love life, then you're going to adapt to that as well. So that's what I got for you in this very first episode of the Men's Mental Health and Growth podcast. I'll be making these very, very regularly, and I hope you've enjoyed my first episode, and I will speak to you very soon.